Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to talk about dedicated researchers. And this is one of the problems with life. And, I talk about this in my greater understanding of Gnosis, meaning truth. What is truth? Well, he's a dedicated researcher for all his life, and that makes his information correct? Well, it doesn't, and this is how we get caught in so many disinformation campaigns, or just plain ignorance, giving somebody credit for something that they don't deserve. And the fact is, it's like so many things in life, and I remember talking to a nurse one time who talked about doctors that she knew, and she says, you got to understand that doctors, of course, graduate medical school. But we don't know which one of the classes they took that they didn't do too good in. And, it occurred to me, well, you're right there. Meaning the fact that, he was good with the back and the liver, but he failed his courses or did poorly on kidneys, on respiration. Well, we don't know that, just like we don't know the records of any of these medical people. So we don't know what they're doing in general. So we don't know if somebody's killing people every day of the week because you'll never be informed of it. Oh, he went to medical school. He has a certificate. Well, what does that mean? It means very little. There are a group of people who are test passers. They can pass any test. They're good at that. That doesn't make them good at medicine or anything else. And I tend to think people that are good at something tend not to be bookie good. So maybe they're C or B students, and the A student who's got all the jargon down, the brainwashing down, probably is not the best person in any field. But we don't know if their research is good. They write a book and you take it for face value. Well, I've done all this research, I've investigated it, and here it is. Well, what does that mean? Well, what you've done is you've now reading a book from a self-appointed expert. So self-appointed experts have no value whatsoever. You don't know if any of that information is good, but people are going to say, gee, look at this book. Somebody published it for you. You must be smart. That doesn't mean anything. It means another publishing house with varying degrees of quality or non-quality. And of course, the editors and whoever decided to take that book did it for business reasons mostly. So does it give that any value? Well, not really. Not unless you can compare a book to many other books on the exact same subject. And that's what research is about. You read a bunch of books on the exact same subject, and then you try and reach a synergistic understanding of whether that information is good or that person is good in general. Now, if there's no other books on that subject, well, you've got a real problem as well, because you have nothing to compare it to. But there's the assumption that you got a book published, that you're an expert, and then other people believe you. They take your incorrect information and then repeat it as fact, and then they may even be people in authority. So these people in authority, well, I read that book, I'm whatever, and I give it credit. So here we go again. We're building disinformation on disinformation, and this is really poor and a terrible way to do things. And I run into this all the time. So somebody writing a book means nothing. It's interesting information, or that person's personal opinion based on where he's coming from and based on his understanding of the subject and whatever research he did. But did he understand the research? Did he understand the implications of it? So if you're a person who has no knowledge in an area and you go in there and get information on it and you report that information verbatim from whoever you got it from, is that good information? Again, we're going down to that person's opinion or understanding of a subject that could be completely wrong, and you've now repeated it as complete fact. So one lie builds on another lie, or one disinformation, misinterpretation, personal opinion. And the whole idea is, how do you find things that are not personal opinion? And you have to watch for this if you're a serious researcher or you're a serious student of Gnosis. What is the truth here? You've got to understand that people, particularly if they put bibliographies in the back, I stole all my information from here. Well, the bibliography tells you where he got his information from. This then warped his opinion. Now, you're supposed to use a synergistic model of it, but a lot of people don't. And you can watch for things like when people quote in a book. Well, Descartes said this. Einstein said that. Well, who cares what they said? What is your synergistic understanding of it? You've taken that information and now you've applied it to what's happening now because, Einstein has been dead for 60, 70 years. His information came from the 1800s. Well, what is your interpretation now in modern times? Me ain't got no opinion. Me go back 200 years. Look what said here in biography. Fred Flintstone said this. So the whole idea is we're getting into this ridiculous reality that's out there. So you have to understand the nature of information. That's all it is. Information is one person's opinion. Now, I even hate to say educated opinion because he may be educated and completely wrong. And quite frankly, all the education we have out there now, all the teachers, everybody else there, by the vast majority, you're talking about 99%, is all disinformation, bogus nonsense. They're repeating stuff they learned in school that is hundreds of years old and doesn't apply anymore. Now, I don't think people really understand what I'm saying here. You've got to understand the concept of this entire fake experts, disinformation. I've been trying to get this out to people in short little blurbs for a long time. But I run into this every time I research something that I have fantastic knowledge of because I've been researching it for 40 to 50 years. I've read hundreds of books on it, are constantly feeling the pulse of what's going on there. And I read somebody's comments on things and they're totally wrong. I found this yet again with people who are totally ignorant of what witchcraft, sorcery, occultism, Satanism is. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they're getting information basically from misinformed, born-again Christian types who think anything is demonic. And let's remember that your typical Christian will consider Mormons demons, and the Catholics demons, and any sect of Christianity that they are not involved with is considered evil. Let's understand that. The Christians have been demonizing Mormonism and Catholicism for hundreds of years. These are the devil's work. Well, here we go again. That's their personal interpretation. So that how are they going to know what occultism is? What are they going to know about what Satanism? They know nothing. And they're not reading any books. They don't have interviews with these people. It amazes me that satanic experts out there who are babbling all over YouTube and the internet, I don't find a single interview with anybody from a satanic church or anybody else. Now, I'm assuming these people would have no problem giving interviews, and why aren't they contacting a whole bunch of organizations and asking them and having interviews with them into these areas? They're not. And I don't know if they've been turned down or not, but I doubt it. I don't think they have any interest in talking to or getting information from the, quote, horse's mouth. Talk to the churches. Well, we're not going to get anything from them. It doesn't matter whether you get it. You're not getting any information from anything else. Why don't you go out there and talk to these people and get their side of the story? The interviews I've seen that kind of cursory go through this are not asking very good questions. They're really bad interviewers. They want to play nicey guy to get you back for the second interview, and that way you can pull more out of people because they trust you. And that's an interesting tact, but I haven't seen the second interviews reveal much of anything. So when we get into all this stuff, we have to understand that you're getting wrong information, one wrong information piled on another because it came from an expert than that other person who doesn't want to do the research. And this is very typical with so-called law enforcement, even the so-called better guys in there, is that they take the word of a guy who claims that he knows something, so they don't have to do the research. Then they build upon that as fact. And I found one error after another in what these people have stated. Some pretty egregious errors that they have misstated what's going on because they're trying to fill in information so they don't have to study it, so they don't have to talk to Satanists, so they don't have to read this satanic information and literature. And this is, of course, what goes on out there. So you can't believe any of this. But what bothers me, and the ultimate question here, is that if this is wrong, how much of all the other research have they done is wrong as well? Are they believing other liars and fools and reporting it as fact? Well, they must be. So how much can you take in informational sources from people stating, well, yeah, I know that. What do you mean you know that? Someone told you that, and you're assuming that person knew what they were talking about and may have not even been a liar. He may be honestly thinking he knows something, but he also could be blackmailed, harassed, and paid off to make these statements. And something is very wrong when you have experts in a lot of areas that are getting vital information incorrectly. They're building cases against groups and organizations that have no validity to them whatsoever, and then they're contriving things that happen to connect with that organization. Oh yeah, that organization left New York and went to Chicago, and then in Chicago there are all these crimes. Well, I don't know if that's true or not. And it's also amazing that these organizations never seem to be arrested. They weren't accused of anything. None of their top echelon was in any way indicted for anything, arrested, put in prison, brought to trial. Yeah, it's all this is happening, and they're all involved in these horrible, horrific murders and child sacrifice, but there's absolutely nothing that can be pinned on them. I mean, none of this makes any kind of sense whatsoever. And we have to be very careful of what we believe out there. So the person who is a Gnosis student, those who are my students, this kind of information I'm giving you right now is very critical. What does it mean? Because if you're going to find truth, which truth empowers you, truth allows you to ascend out of the human condition, allows you to conquer the earth plane and control it, well, you're not going to get it from these people. So if you're following them, if you're listening to them, if you're getting information from them, it's all wrong. And when it's all wrong, it means that ultimately hurts your evolution and it hurts the society you live in because it's nothing more than lies and distortions, even if they believe it, which I guess would not be a lie, but they may have been convinced. But we don't know that. We don't know what's behind it. We don't know if they were deliberately told to do that, because everything's is rigged. People are not going to talk out. And the situation is that we have all sorts of problems with people who claim to be experts and then claim they have information and then they claim they don't release it, because that means that they're under some sort of outside pressure, fear, have been blackmailed, have been paid off or whatever. So we have to take that in consideration. That can go for anything. So it doesn't matter what it is. So you've got to understand how this process works, who to believe, and how to analyze it for yourself, because you're never going to get information from somebody else that is valid. You have to come up with your own, and that's what I've always done. I'd love to be able to recommend other people's books, other people's products, other people's anything. It's real simple to do that. Let them handle that. Getting into the manufacture, the production, and putting together things, even as this talk here, is a lot of work. I'd prefer to go to somebody else. I can't do that because nobody even can touch my feet. They have no idea what they're talking about. Their misinterpretations, their possible corruption is so profound that you can't buy anything that they say. So you have to go in there and analyze, test, and so forth, as I've done from things as complicated as philosophical understandings down to physical products, which don't work. What are we supposed to say to these pundits, these experts, when you get physical products that they claim they've researched for 30 years that are garbage? What do you do to that? That's the expert you went to. So you went to an expert who's supposedly doing all this great stuff for many, many years, and it turns out that whatever they're doing, when they released it to the public, was crap. And you have to wonder, is everything else they've done the same low-level garbage. Are they delusional? Have they done the proper testings? Do they know anything? Well, it comes down to the fact that it's a zero, baby. And the only guy that seems to know anything out there, the only guy who tests things, the only guy who's looking for truth and looking to get the edge out there is myself. Everybody else seems to be in one way or another delusional, misled, bought off, or just plain liars. Until next time.